Hello again, I am Blunty, and inside this box is a Nintendo Game Boy Advance, but it has been technologically molested, and instead of being an absolute classic handheld console filled with powerful nostalgia and home to a very long list of legendary games, it now has been Frankensteined, pulled apart and reassembled with a few clever new parts to turn it into a beautifully practical and fairly decent looking even console. Like proper console. Nix the handheld, ixnay on the handheld A. Complete with modern HDMI output, hardware selective aspect ratio, a wired controller that can give you an identical feeling input experience to the GBA original, and a SNES controller port, and, believe it or not, also the ability to work wirelessly with Switch Pro controllers, and PlayStation 4 controllers, and PlayStation 5 controllers, and yes, Xbox One controllers too. And now that I have your thirsty attention, please do the thing with the comments, the thumb, and make sure the bell is boinged, because the YouTube machine mind is a heartless and cruel mistress, and I need your help with it. Please? Little kindness? Thanks. So, chances aren't zero that you've come across something like this before. There's one or two other options out there that do what this does, rehousing a GBA's original guts, adding modern video outputs and the like. But IntecGaming, who made this one, are hoping to provide, in their own words, a less expensive and convenient alternative to customers compared to GBA Consolizer. The GBA Consolizer being one of the other options I mentioned. Also, there's emulation-based consoles like the Retron SQ I reviewed almost exactly a year ago, as a matter of fact, and I liked it very much. It basically reads the game cartridge's ROM and shoves it into memory, where all the game is then emulated. There's no real Nintendo hardware involved at all to run the game. Emulation has its perks. There's some nifty tricks and gimmicks you can do with it, but it also has some drawbacks too. Among which is there are some particular cartridges, some special hardware that it just will not work with ever. It just won't work. It's possible. But I'll come back to that a little bit later. But trust me, it's fun. But this way, the console conversion way, you're running your games on actual, real, genuine, and official Nintendo hardware, just like they were supposed to be run. This sample they've sent me has been pre-assembled, but the idea is you buy the kit and you use your own or a cheaply sourced second-hand GBA, perhaps recycle one that has a bit of external damage or perhaps a damaged screen, so you're not taking a perfect GBA away from the world because, well, you know, there are only so many out there and we should preserve the perfect ones if we can. Anyway, you disassemble it, instructions are provided, and you rehouse the motherboard and the controller board into the base unit and GBA shell respectively, with some add-on boards of course that constitute the kit alongside the housing shell that, you know, make it do the things what it does. I'm told the GBA shell they've given me here with my sample is an aftermarket one, and I've been warned it might not feel perfect as an original one would. Frankly, it feels fine if it is an aftermarket one. It's quite a good one. I think the shoulder buttons are a little bit stiffer and clickier than I remember, but sadly I don't actually have an original GBA to compare it directly to side by side. My own GBA was pinched many years ago and I'm still pissy about it. It's been designed for easy assembly, no soldering or anything fancy required. If you can use a screwdriver, you can put this thing together basically. On the back of the assembled console is a switch for aspect ratio, which is only intended for GBA games, by the way, not of course Game Boy or Game Boy Color titles, which are kind of square in their aspect ratio anyway. And of course it should go without saying that this unit does in fact perfectly play Game Boy and Game Boy Color titles because again, it's running official Nintendo made hardware of the GBA and that's what the GBA could do as well. Also there's a USB-C for power and of course the ever important HDMI out. So let's see some gameplay. I've got a mix of GBA games, Game Boy original games and Game Boy Color games and a piece of that special hardware I was talking about before we'll get to. Over the years, I've had a few emulation-based consoles, both multi-system and ones like the Retron SQ, which were more focused on a singular console. And of course, being emulation-based, there was one thing I've never been able to do with any of them, which, as a photography nerd, has always bugged me. But now I can do it, because the IntecGaming GBA kit allows me to finally use my Game Boy camera in a way where I can capture it perfectly through HDMI. And I've been sitting on some really fun ideas around this concept for a few years now, so yay, I can finally get onto them. Other specialized hardware that will in fact of course work perfectly with this is the e-reader as well, if you happen to have one of those little rare buggers lying around. They were kind of fun, weird little gimmick that Nintendo tried then kind of abandoned, but you know. And of course it will work perfectly with those odd little cartridges that had sort of tilt sensors or vibration kickers in them like Pokemon Pinball here, although of course being separated from the cartridge and having it in the console and not in your hands kind of makes some of that functionality a bit weird and maybe even a bit pointless, but hey, it does work perfectly. I also appreciate that they recycle the GBA housing itself to serve as the wired controller. Smart design, both from an environmental standpoint, because you're recycling the old case, and of course it gives you a controller that feels naturally, exactly and perfectly how these games were meant to feel. You're literally playing them on a GBA. It's just, kind of the screen's elsewhere now and a lot bigger. But of course, as a handheld, ergonomics were compromised by size and pocketability requirements, which is why I'm also very happy I can just use a big fat standard modern controller from any of the 3 major consoles. Because quite frankly, I have great big man paws and, well, they fit better than the old GBA did. So, in conclusion, basically this is exactly what I've wanted for a while now. Full and complete original GBA functionality in a small and tiny box with a clean and easy HDMI output so I can play my OG GBA stuff, my Game Boy stuff and my Game Boy Color stuff, all with hardware perfect results. And the convenience of HDMI out for lean back big screen gameplay. And it's also really handy for someone like me because, well, I stream and I record gameplay, so having HDMI out of a GBA console is really nice for that. I like the look and feel. Seems like it's solidly put together. The design is, the general look of it is, it's slick and clean without trying to get too fancy or too retro and gimmicky. The instructions for assembly seem clear and uncomplicated. The thoughtfulness of including a SNES controller port alongside a wireless functionality shows this was made by people who actually want to play these games and want this thing to be nice to play games on. And not just, function and take advantage of those of us with deep nostalgia for this stuff. So first impressions, strong and happy. It's running as a Kickstarter right now as I publish, and in full openness, I initially denied their request for a review because I get a lot of Kickstarter campaigns saying, hey, would you tell people about a Kickstarter thing? And quite frankly, I've gone cold on the often shakiness of Kickstarter projects, and I certainly don't recommend things I have not used myself with my own hands, so I told them to kindly shuffle on. But they totally got that, they understood, they hooked me up with this sample, assured me I'm absolutely free to be honest and as critical as I feel I need to be, and what arrived is, in fact, exactly what they promised it would be. So, usual grain of salt at your own risk warning that goes with any crowdfunded project, but my impression is they're on the level, they're legit, they have some good design work, and the thing they're trying to sell you works exactly like they said it would. So I'm honestly hoping they meet their goal and they can get a whole bunch of these things out in the world for people to use. So yeah, link in the down below if you are curious. At the time of publishing, there's about 35 days or so to go in the campaign, depending on when I actually push this live. Thank you for watching. Hope you found this as interesting as I did. I am Blunty, and we'll catch you next time. And as always, thank you to each and every one of the patrons whose above and beyond support is lovely.